US President Donald Trump made an emergency statement about the fate of NATO and American troops in Europe. The US president threatened to reduce the American military presence not only in Germany, as he had promised earlier, but also in Italy and Spain. He linked this to criticism of US actions in Iran and the lack of support from Berlin, Rome, and Madrid. As Trump stated, quote, "Italy didn't help us at all, and Spain behaved terribly, absolutely terribly." Italy has already responded. Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto rejected the accusation that Italy supposedly did not help the US in any way. And he stated that in fact Italy offered its assistance for the maritime security mission. This was highly appreciated by the American military, but Trump doesn't understand what he's even talking about. But in reality, if we believe previous insider information, there's nothing bad for Europe's security in this statement by Donald Trump, even if he really does relocate troops from Germany, Spain, and Italy. And in this episode, I'll explain why that's the case and why there's nothing bad about this news. I'm Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this together. But before we start, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave any comment under this video. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel Peachy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it happens. So, US President Donald Trump has threatened to reduce the American military presence now also in Italy and Spain. At a briefing in the Oval Office, responding to a journalist's question about the possibility of withdrawing troops from Italy and Spain, Trump answered, "Yes, it's likely, why not?" He linked this to criticism of US actions in Iran and the lack of support from Rome and Madrid. Italy didn't help us at all, and Spain behaved terribly, absolutely terribly. And on the eve of April 30, Trump announced that Washington is considering reducing its contingent in Germany, where there are about 36 million Americans. Trump stated that there are only about 70,000 US Army soldiers in Europe, plus there is also support staff there. According to Trump, a decision will be made in the near future. The reason was criticism from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who directly pointed out that the war in Iran has major consequences for Germany's economic viability. And he stated that neither the US nor Donald Trump personally have a strategy to end the war. Plus, Merz says that it's already obvious that the Americans entered the war without any understanding of how to end it or what the point of it was in the first place. In response, Donald Trump accused Friedrich Merz of not understanding the Iranian threat. Trump called Germany a broken country and urged the chancellor to interfere less. Trump stated that Washington's relations with Rome and Madrid have become beneficial and effective after the start of the US and Israel's military operation in the Middle East. And the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who was previously quite close to Donald Trump, refused to participate in the Iranian campaign, criticized Trump's statements about the Pope, and did not grant permission to use the airbase in Sicily. Let me remind you that regarding the Pope, Trump made unfounded claims that supposedly the Pope supports the idea of Iran having nuclear weapons. And Pete Hegseth, the US Secretary of Defense, tried to present this war as a holy war, a kind of crusade. Pete Hegseth even openly stated that this is a war in the name of Jesus Christ, to which the Pope said, "Stop using the name of Jesus Christ to wage your war. You shouldn't justify your war with the name of the Lord." He said that this is blasphemy at the very least. To which the Pentagon even summoned an official representative of the Catholic Church for a conversation, saying that you can't do that, you should be supporting us. As for Spain, the Prime Minister of this country, Pedro Sanchez, became one of the most vocal critics of the US actions in Iran. After that, Trump repeatedly spoke harshly about him and threatened a trade embargo, and even threatening to suspend Spain's NATO membership, although such a mechanism doesn't actually exist, and how Trump was planning to implement this is unknown. I should note that by the end of 2025, about 12,500 American servicemen were stationed in Italy and almost 4,000 soldiers in Spain. And it's important to remember here that, according to Reuters, the Pentagon has developed sanction scenarios against so-called holdout allies. The Trump administration even made a list of good and bad NATO allies. And the US president can withdraw troops from, as he put it, unreliable countries and redeploy them to those states that showed loyalty during the Iranian campaign. And this is where all the most interesting and most important things begin. But first, I'll tell you about Italy's reaction to this move by Trump. Italy's Minister of Defense Guido Crosetto commented on Trump's new statement and said that he simply doesn't understand the reasons for such behavior by the American president. Crosetto rejected the accusation that Italy did not help the US, especially regarding security in the Strait of Hormuz. Here's a quote. "We also offered our assistance for the maritime security mission. This was highly appreciated by the American military." And I would like to point out that there are 7 American military bases in Italy. The US forces in particular provide Italy with air defense systems which would take decades to replace. That's why, for Italy, the departure of the Americans would, of course, be too risky. The Spanish government has not yet commented on Trump's new threats. This is not the first time, by the way, that the country has faced such tough statements from the American president. Last week, Reuters published an internal Pentagon memo stating that the US is considering seeking Spain's exclusion from NATO. But here, of course, Trump is a bit overconfident about this. It's not entirely clear how Washington could implement this, since there is no obvious procedure that would allow the United States of America to make such a decision without the consent of other allies. As they say, it's important to dig deeper here. Earlier, there was already information that as a form of punishment, certain NATO countries helped the US in the war with Iran. Trump may withdraw American troops from there and move them to other NATO countries such as Poland, Romania, Lithuania, and Greece, which have helped the US more in the war against Iran. And all these countries, mind you, are the eastern flank of NATO, which means American troops will be even closer to Russia's borders, the country that is threatening Europe with war. And the paradox is that the countries of Eastern Europe are the most interested in hosting American troops, since they are on the border with Russia. They are also among those who spend the most on defense in NATO, and these same Eastern European countries were among the first to signal their readiness to support the international coalition to control the Hormuz Strait. Romania immediately approved the US request to use its military bases. And it's important to remember that Trump simply cannot legally withdraw from NATO, because that requires 2/3 of the Senate votes, and by the way, his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, once lobbied for such a law. In addition, Trump cannot significantly reduce the number of American troops in Europe, because in December 2025, Congress passed an amendment prohibiting the reduction of American troops in Europe below the level of 76,000 soldiers for more than 45 days, and Trump himself signed that law at the time. Currently, there are about 70,000 American troops stationed in Europe, give or take, but again, this number varies due to rotations. Therefore, the only thing Trump can do is to redeploy troops within Europe. That is, he really can withdraw some troops from Spain, Italy, and Germany and move them to Eastern Europe. This is a great decision. It's the best that Europeans and Ukrainians could have hoped for in terms of security. And whose worst nightmare is this? Vladimir Putin's. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and details are in the description of this video. There are different platforms and options there. Choose the one that suits you. I will be grateful for your support. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.